O-Level Biology 5090, Chapter 19, Relationship of Organisms with One Another and with the Environment, Part 1. And in Part 1, we will study the energy flow. So, what is energy? Energy is the ability to do work, and the main source of energy for an ecosystem is the radiant energy or light energy derived from the sun. Ecosystem, a system in which abiotic and biotic factors, abiotic and abiotic and biotic. Abiotic means non-living and biotic means living. So the system in which abiotic and no biotic factors interact with each other, that is called as ecosystem. And in an ecosystem, the source of energy is the sun, and the green plants, they capture that sun energy in the chloroplast by the chlorophyll, which is present in the chloroplast, and the chlorophyll absorbs the sunlight for the process of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is a process by which energy is manufactured by the plants. So that energy is transferred from the plants to the other organisms which depend on plants for this food. So only the producers on this earth are the green plants which are able to manufacture the food by the process of photosynthesis. All other organisms, all other living organisms, they depend on photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is the only process. So in this way, the sun energy is captured by the green plants, and that energy is used to manufacture the food, and then food is transferred to the other organisms which depend on plants. So in this way, the food and the energy which is transferred to the other organisms is used to do work. So in this way, we can say that all living organisms depend on photosynthesis for energy and for food. Next, food chain. So the transfer of energy from the producers to the organisms takes place with this food chain. You can say the food chain is the linear network of links in a food web. Food web in which many food chains interact with each other. So linear network or linear transfer of energy from the producers to the organisms is called as food chain. So producers will always be the green plants, which will process the photosynthesis, and as a result of photosynthesis there will be the production of food, and that food will be used as by the other organisms. So the food chain starts with the producers and then ending at apex predator species or detrivores or decomposers. A food chain also shows how the organisms are related with one another by the food they eat. Each level of a food chain represents a different trophic level. So in this way, the food chain, by the food chain, the energy is transferred from one organism to the other. So here, students, here some of the food chains can be shown. So you can see corn. Corn is a green plant which produces the corn, and corn will be eaten by the rats, and then the rats will be eaten by the owls. So in this way, energy which was captured by these green plants, it will be transferred first of all to the rats, and from rats it will be transferred to the owl. So you can say it is the shortest chain which consists of only two trophic levels. And in the next food chain, you can say the carrots are produced by the plants. You can say the roots, carrots are the roots of the green plants, and these carrots, you can say the rabbits, they will depend on these carrots, so they will eat these carrots, and then fox will eat the rabbits, and lion depends on fox for food. So in this way, in this case, the energy is transferred from the carrots to the rabbits, and from rabbit to fox, and from fox to lion. In the third example, you can say the grass will be eaten by grasshopper, and frog will depend on grasshopper, and python or snake, it will eat those frogs, and then eagle will depend for food on python. So in this way, the energy will be transferred from producers to the other organisms. So here you can see the first food chain consists of only two trophic levels, and the other on three trophic levels, and one other four trophic levels after the producers. So in this way, we can say the energy transfer takes place from the producers to the other organisms. So what are producers? Producers are always green plants which manufacture the food because they have chlorophyll inside, and that chlorophyll captures the sunlight, and then that sunlight or the radiant energy is changed into the chemical energy, and sunlight is changed into the chemical energy, and chemical energy is used for the process of photosynthesis. And in photosynthesis, the different steps takes place. So producers will always be the green plants. So only they are able to produce the food, not only for their own use, but also for other living organisms. So with the help of sunlight and carbon dioxide and water, they are able to produce the food. And what are the consumers? Consumers which depend on plants for food. Consumers are unable to manufacture their food, so they depend on plants on their food. So they will eat the plants or to live alive. So consumers can be many, but in next slide we will discuss one by one the different types of consumers. So first of all, the herbivores. Herbivores are those consumers, those types of consumers which depend on plants for food. As for example, we can say that the plant eating animals are called as herbivores. So the herbivores will only eat the plants. So they can be, the examples can be the horse, cow, rabbit, deer, etc. So there are many other organisms which depend only on plants. Now the next, carnivores. Carnivores are those types of consumers which depend on herbivores. They eat the herbivores, or you can say the meat eating animals are called as carnivores. So they only eat the meat. So the different examples of them are cats, tigers, eagles, hawks, owls, sharks, spiders, etc. So in this way, these are the examples of different carnivores which are the meat eaters. Next, decomposers. The decomposers are the organisms which, so the decomposers are those organisms which depend on dead and decaying organism. It means these are those organisms which release enzymes to decompose the dead and decaying organisms. And the examples of these types of organisms are bacterium or fungus, which live in the soil. So whenever any animal or plant die, they decompose them into their basic components, and in this way they are able to release those basic components into the soil, so they will be used by the plants again, or in this way they are recycled. Food web. Food web in which many food chains interact with each other. So, the food chain is the linear transfer of energy, but food web in which one organism depend on many other food resources. So in this way, we can say that the many food chains will interact with one another, So consists of many food chains. A food chain only follows just one path as animals find food. A hawk eats a snake, which has eaten a frog, which has eaten a grasshopper, which has eaten grass. A food web shows the many different paths plants and animals are connected. So the animal depend on different types of food. If one food is not available, they are able to eat the other foods. So in this way, the many food chains are involved to make one food web. So here a food web is shown, and you can see over here many food chains are there in this one food web. As for example, the tree will be eaten by the goat, and goat will be eaten by the jackal, and jackal can be eaten by the lion. So this is the only one food chain. And in the other food chain, tree and food will it will be eaten by the goat, and goat will be eaten by the lion. So in this way, there are two food chains, and the third food chain be from tree to wildcat, and from wildcat to lion. So this is the third, and then the tree to mouse, mouse to owl. So in this way, you can say there are many or more than 10 different food chains which will make up one food web. So in this way, you can say the wildcat or lion can eat many of these animals. So in this way, one animal depends on many foods, because if one food is not available, if one type of food is not available, it can have the other foods to eat. So a food web is different from food chain. Next, energy flow and trophic levels. And students, you know that already told you in the start of this video that energy is captured by the green plants. And so the green plants captured the energy from the sun, and that energy, only 10% of that energy is transferred to the producers, and then producers respire, and you can say uh, evaporation takes place. So after that, energy is transferred to the primary consumers. Primary consumers which get only 10% of that energy which the plants have used. So then 90% of that energy will also be wasted in respiration, in other life activities. Energy will be, and some of the energy will be wasted as heat. So it means if 10,000 kilojoules of energy is available to the producers, so only 1,000 kilojoules of energy will be available to the primary consumers. Again, to the secondary consumers, the energy will be lost, and only 10% of this 1,000 kilocalories will be available to the secondary consumers. It means only 100 kilocalories of energy will be available. And then in the same way, the energy when reached to the tertiary consumer, again 90% of that energy will be lost in respiration, in feces, and in other processes, and as heat. So in this way, only 10 kilocalorie joules of energy will be remained behind. So in this way, I would like to say that if the food chain is short, so the energy level will be better. Otherwise, if the food chains are large, it means the organisms which are at the base of that food chain, they will have very small amount of energy available to them. So in this way, if food chains are more successful in an ecosystem. The energy, transfer of energy can be represented in the form of ecological pyramids. So an ecological pyramid is a graphical representation of the relationship between different organisms in an ecosystem. Each of the bars that make up the pyramid represent a different trophic level, and their order, which is based on who eat whom, represents the flow of energy. So you can say a pyramid is formed in this case, which will show the different trophic level of the organisms in an ecosystem. So in an ecological pyramid, uh, again, the graphical representation. So I want to go on the pyramid. You can see over here, the producers will always be at the base of the pyramid, and these producers will be eaten by the primary consumers, and primary consumers will be eaten by the secondary consumers, and then tertiary consumers. So the largest amount will be of the producers, and consumers, primary consumers will be lesser in number than the producers, and secondary consumers will be lesser in number than primary consumers, and same tertiary consumers will be lesser in number than secondary consumers. So in this way, if size is increased, so the number will be decreased. So in this way, the ecological pyramids, you can say, represent the food chains, different food chains, or energy flow in an ecosystem. So first of all, I would like to describe the pyramid of number. So different pyramids can be shown, can be represented in the ecosystem. So first of all, pyramid of number. A pyramid of number is a graphical representation that shows the number of the organisms. Number of the organisms at each trophic level. It is an upright pyramid in light of the fact that in an ecosystem, the producers are always more in number than other trophic levels. Yes, producers are always more in number, but if there is tree instead of grass or small plants, then the number will decrease. Because in that case, the size is increased. If size will be increased, so the number will be decreased. So in this way, the pyramid of number will be different in different food chains. So in the next, I want to show one type of pyramid, that is in which at the base or the producers. So these are the producers, which are plants or grass. They will be greater in number as comparison to the primary consumers, which will be less in number than plants, and then uh, secondary consumers, which are frogs, which will be lesser in number than the grasshoppers, and snake is the tertiary consumer, uh, which will be lesser in number than the frogs. So in this way, you can say in this type of food chain, the producers are smaller in size. So the grass plants are very small in size. So they will be greater in number as comparison to primary, secondary, and tertiary consumer. but but instead of grass, if there is tree, so the pyramid will be of this type. I want to draw that pyramid. So tree, and then there will be the grasshopper, and then frog, and then snake. So the pyramid will be of this type if there is tree instead of grass or plants. So next is pyramid of biomass. An ecological pyramid is a graphical representation designed to show the biomass or bioproductivity at each trophic level in a system. Biomass, the dry mass of an organism. In this, you can see the producers. They have largest biomass, as they will have 1000 kilogram. The herbivores will be lesser in biomass, they will only have 100 kilogram, and the primary consumers will 10 kilogram and 1 kilogram. As the food chain or the pyramid moves towards the consumers or the from the producers, so the biomass start decrease. So the pyramid of biomass will always be just like this. That is, the producers are always greater in number and in biomass as comparison to other as comparison to other consumers. The next, pyramid of energy. If the producers are greater in number, so energy will always be greater in case of producers. So I would like to read this first. An energy pyramid is a model that shows the flow of energy from one trophic or feeding level to the next in an sorry. The model is a diagram that compares the energy used by organisms at each trophic level. So I would want to go to the next. You can see the pyramid of energy, and you can see that energy will always be greater in the producer because they directly capture that energy from the sun. And already told you that 90% of that energy is lost as heat. So the energy which reach to the producers is 10% of that total energy. So if 10,000 kilocalories of energy is available to the plants, so the primary consumers will have only 1,000 kilocalories, secondary consumers will have 100 kilocalories, and tertiary will have only 10 kilocalories. So in this way, the pyramid of energy can be shown that at the base, there will be the producer, which will have the greater number of energy, or and the second highest amount of energy will have the primary consumers, and then secondary consumers, and then tertiary consumers. So in this way, energy flow from the producers towards the consumers. If we compare these three different types of pyramids, you can see three different food chains are shown over here. Producers, uh, in case of producers, pyramid of number. First of all, pyramid of number, grass is there, and then snail, mice. So, and in this case, the blue-tits, caterpillars, and trees, rosebush, aphids, and parasites. So these are the three different food chains which will represent differently the different pyramids of number. As for example, if we talk about the pyramid uh, number with a large producer, tree, I have already shown you in the previous, that is in the pyramid of number, it will be changed. If tree is there, so pyramid number uh, at the base of the this pyramid, producers will be shown by a very small bar. And caterpillars, as you know, they are greater in number, so they will be shown in this way. And blue tits, they are, you can say, larger in size, but so they will be smaller in number than the caterpillars. So in this way, the different food chains will show the different pyramid of number. Uh, it was all about the energy flow. Please like, share, and subscribe my channel. And tomorrow, inshallah, we will upload the second video. And thanks for watching.